The Seder has several mitzvahs and several important minhagim as well. So the mitzvahs are matzah, which is deraisa from the Torah, and mor, that are herbs, and we have the daled kosos, 4 cups of wine, and we also have the mitzvah deraisa of sipur yitzias Mitzrayim. And there's many important minhagim as well. There's karpas and several other minhagim. So the Shulchan Aruch starts out by telling us that the table should be set before Yontif. While it's still daytime, the pillows should already be out and ready so that everybody can lean. And this is in order so that children, it's late, you start late, you have to start after dark. The Mishnah Berurah makes the point, the Shulchan Aruch makes the point, that unlike other Yom Tovim, we're not allowed to start early. Other Yom Tovim, like Shabbos, during the year we start early. So, or you can at least. So you can't do that on Pesach, and the reason is because the first cup is the Kiddush cup, but that's the first kos, and that is one of the arba kosos, and so it's drawn after the matzah and mor. And we even say in the Seder that matzah and mor has to be it can only be at night. And so we have to wait specifically until nightfall. But on the other hand, we want to start as early as possible, particularly if there's children. I mean, regular people get tired also, fall asleep and miss out on some of the Seder. But so it's important that everything's set and ready to go, and that a person starts right on time. So right when you're about to start, the leader of the Seder, the minhag is to put on the kittel, which is the white robe that a person usually gets married in, and they're usually buried in it. And so there's several reasons given for what the reason is for wearing a kittel by the Seder. So one of the reasons given is to remember the Yom HaMisa, the day of our death. Now, why would we want to do that on Yom Tov, right? Why would you want to remember on Pesach the day of our death? So one reason that is explained is that there's a minhag on Pesach specifically to use the most beautiful kelim, the most beautiful vessels that we have. And in fact, Mishnah Berurah says that really during the year, we should use really beautiful vessels. It seems like even on Shabbos, it seems like our most beautiful kelim should be reserved for Pesach. And so because of that, because we're having this incredibly beautiful royal kind of meal, things might get out of hand a little bit. So a person dons the kittel to keep the person's mind that in the right place. However, many of the other mafarshim say absolutely not. There's no way that we would be remembering the Yom HaMisa on Yontif. And so there's one opinion that I saw that the Pesach Seder is called avoda. It's actually in the pasuk by the Rasha. He says, "What is this avoda to you?" So this is our avoda in the Beis HaMikdash, like the Beis HaMikdash avoda, and therefore, just like the Kohen Gadol would don white, so we also don white for the avoda. I think there's another opinion. I think it's the Gra who says that Moshe Rabbeinu, during the Yemei Meluyim, when the Beis HaMikdash was being inaugurated, so he did the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash. Moshe Rabbeinu, not our own. And so the Gemara asked, well, what did he wear? And he didn't wear the Big Day Kahuna. So the Gemara concludes there that he wore a white robe. Goes through a whole thing, but that he most likely wore some kind of white robe garment. So again, that's our avoda, and so the Gra says that that's the reason why that we wear the kittel during the Pesach Seder. The minhag is that a person who's in a velus, if a person finds himself in a velus, they should not wear the kittel. Minhag is to not wear the kittel for the Seder. So there's a mitzvah of seva, of leaning, during the Seder. And it's actually a very important thing. Several of the mitzvahs, if they weren't done while leaning, you have to do them over again. Really? And yes, really. And it's actually a big thing. I mean, it's kind of weird. Everyone's lean, and they maybe don't take it so in a heavy way. But it's part of the mitzvah is to lean. And if you don't do it, well, I'll talk about in a minute more which ones. And it's really, besides the morer, and I believe the karpas, it's really all of them should be done leaning. It's just some of them you can't do it over again, so you're just like in a bad situation. You really should do it over again, but for reasons which we'll discuss, you can't. But that's, so you're left in a situation you don't want to be in, because now you can't fulfill it exactly correctly. But the Mishnah Berurah says that person should lean the entire, really should lean the entire, Shulchan Aruch says, you should lean the entire Pesach Seder. You should really lean the entire Seder. A person should have a pillow next on the chair there and lean the entire Seder. And it's b'diavad. If a person doesn't lean the entire Seder, b'diavad it's okay. Or if a person would hurt them to do it or something like that, their back's not so good, they can't lean. But otherwise, l'chadchila, really they should lean the entire Seder. You have to lean on your left side, and even a lefty has to do that. And the reason for that is because that most people want to, first of all, eat with their right hand. If you're a right-handed person, you want to be able to eat with your right hand. But then it should be that a lefty would go the other way. But the Gemara says that it's a sakana. There's a danger in leaning. The way that your esophagus in your throat is, that it's not good to lean on your left side, on your right side. And so we're supposed to, everybody, righty or lefty, is supposed to lean on their left side and eat. And if that you are in front of your parents, so you do not have to ask permission to lean, and the reason for that is mistama, a parent is not makpid on their child and will allow their child to lean. But if a person is in front of their rav, or not only their rav, a rav, anyone that's taught them Torah, it does not have to be their rav, but if anyone has taught them Torah, so they have to ask reshus in order to lean.
Really?
Yes, I one time had a Pesach Seder with my Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, and we asked him beforehand, is it okay if we lean a bit out of cover, out of honor?
So, coming over to your place, I better ask.
Is that the same with wearing a kittel? We have to ask
The kittel's usually, I believe it's usually worn by the person who conducts the Seder.
Just that person?
I
Not
believe
all head of household?
Isn't all married men or something?
But says all married men or
Doesn't mean.
I thought it was
Gotta
that.
be a discussion about that.
Married men's wife.
That's, okay, I'm wrong about that. I don't believe there's any issue though of asking, but because leaning is considered to be like casual. You know, that's the idea of it, is to be casual, is to be like we're a melech, and so to act that way in front of a person's rebbe without permission is considered to be.
Even though everybody knows the point of what's going on.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah, okay.
All I can tell you is.
Yes.
Eating in front of your apple with your fingers.
Yeah. So the halacha is that women do not need to lean, and the reason is because the Ravya is of the opinion. There's an opinion called the Ravya that it's not normative nowadays for us to lean at all. Generally, none of us. It's kind of sometimes even uncomfortable to lean, to figure out a way to lean, and so women rely on the Ravya, that they don't need to lean there, or they rely on that opinion. There are times when men will all rely on that opinion, as we'll see. But during the while eating matzah, a person has to lean. If they forget to lean while eating matzah, they're supposed to eat the matzah over again. And so it's important to take this seriously and to, if you want to fulfill the mitzvah properly, to lean. During the Arba Kosos, so this is how it goes. During the first 2 kosos, you're really allowed to drink as much wine as you want anyway. After the first cup, if you wanted to, if you felt like having more wine, you could. Okay. Now the thing is that the rabbis, it says in Shulchan Aruch, the rabbi said we shouldn't do that. The reason is the fear is you'll get drunk before you even get to the Seder, you'll fall asleep, and you'll lose out on fulfilling the Seder. So what they said is don't drink between the first and second cup. Now we Ashkenazim also, unlike the Sephardim, we have a minhag to make a new bracha on each kos. Right? Before we drink each kos, we make a brei pri hagafen. So if that you have to drink since by those first 2 kosos, since by that first cup the general intent is not to drink anymore. If you needed to drink again, it would be a change of mind. Right? The bracha, the halachos of Halachos brachos are that if you decided I'm not drinking anymore or eating anymore, so if you want to eat more, you need to make a new bracha now. So since the practice is not to drink after the first kos, so if you didn't lean, you'd have to make another bracha again. And that would look like you're adding on the kosos. You hold there's like a fifth or a sixth kos. You're not allowed to do that. So you can't re-drink the cup. What the Mishnah Berurah says is, I guess he means to do this from like the beginning of the Seder, is to say, make a condition that I might drink between the first and second cup. And therefore, if you make a mistake later and forget to lean between the first and second cup, you can drink again without a bracha. After the second cup, so again, the first cup, if you made that condition and you blew it and didn't lean, you can drink a second cup while leaning, without it making another bracha. If you didn't make that condition, then you can't drink again. You really need to, but you can't. During this, the second kos is by the sudos, during the meal. So you're definitely allowed to drink another cup. You can drink as many kosos. Probably, again, you should be careful, be wise, and not, get sloshed to where you can't finish the rest of the
You
might lean otherwise.
you'll be leaning without it. So then leaning forward with your head on the table is not called leaning. But,
What if it's on your left side?
so during this, if you forgot to lean for the second kos, you can definitely go back now and drink another kos. The third and fourth kosos are a problem. You can't drink another kos after that. You can't have intent. Right? It's the one after benching, and so after Gal Yisrael. So you can't re-drink the kosos. So you're stuck. You really didn't fulfill it properly. You have to rely on the ravia, as we spoke about before, which says that in our days we don't lean. So by eating afikomen, again, a person has to lean. But you can't eat afikomen twice. So if you forget to lean, you can't go back now. You're basically stuck. So this leaning thing is something that should be taken seriously.
Is this only for the first night, or is it for both nights?
All the halachas of the first night and the second night are identical.
Okay.
Anything which is, it's really the second night we're keeping because it is. It might be the first night. There are other parts of Yontif where the halachas might be a little more lenient the second day, but the Seder is the same. With respect to eating matzah, so by matzah you have to eat, the mitzvah is a chilas matzah. And so our Chazal defined for us what is called an echila, what is called eating. If I take a little speck and put it on my tongue, is that called achila? Is that called eating? Right? And so the way it works is we have to eat what's called a kazayas b'kedei achilas pras. We have to eat a kazayas of matzah, which is a large olive's worth. It's a defined amount. I don't really know how to figure out the amounts, but they make a nice little piece of thing you can get, like a paper that has the shiurim. I know that Rabbi Tendler said that a third of a round matzah or a half of a square, and that should be eaten b'kedei achilas pras, which the shiurim, there's different opinions even on really kazayas. Rabbi Tendler's telling us what saying to the shul. It's a third. There are other opinions. So did he say what a kedei achilas pras is?
No, I didn't talk about that.
So it's usually between 3 and 9 minutes, but you have to eat the matzah relatively quickly. You really should eat it without talking. My Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, I remember he told me that Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he said that some people pick the largest amount of matzah that is called a kazai, so they want to be very stringent, and they pick the shortest amount of time, which would be considered kedei achilas pras, which is to eat a small loaf of bread. And so Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said that it can't be that the Torah would want someone to eat like that. It's impossible that that would be the derech HaTorah, to be shoving matzah into one's mouth that quickly. It's a behemoth way to eat. And so he said, be a little lenient with either the shiur, either the amount of matzah, or the length of time that it takes to eat it. And again, some people should, you have to make, you have to make sure to lean. Right? When you eat the matzah, we have 3 matzahs. Right? There's all sorts of symbolisms that are made, that brought up, Kohen, Levi, Israel. But the idea of the 3 matzahs is there's 3 matzahs. 2 are for lechem mishnah, just like any other Shabbos or Yantiv. You have to have 2 full breads, in this case 2 full matzahs. And then the third one is for the mitzvah of achilas matzah. And so what we do is we break the middle one in half for yachatz, and we hide it for the afikomen. The other one becomes achilas matzah, the mitzvah of matzah. We take the matzahs and we say hamotzi, and then if I remember correctly, we drop the bottom matzah and say the bracha of achilas matzah. That first top matzah, like we said, is lechem mishnah. You should eat a piece of that for lechem mishnah. And then the middle matzah, the middle piece that was left over, that smaller piece, is the piece we use for achilas matzah. And then the third one is used, I think, for korach, for the sandwich, and korach. And so that should be, again, eaten leaning. You have to eat it leaning. When you make the sandwich, also, you should eat it leaning as well. And according to the Mishnah Berurah, not everyone holds like this, you only have to eat 1 kazayas of matzah. Okay, there are other opinions that you have to eat 2, 1 for lechem mishnah and then 1 for achilas matzah. The Mishnah Berurah does not paskin that way. He paskins that it's the same thing. And so you can eat just 1 kazayas of matzah at that point. You have to eat shmura matzah for the Seder. Shmura matzah, the word shmura means it's guarded, because it says in the Torah that the Leil Shmura was guarded. And so you have to eat shmura matzah, which means it was guarded from the time that it was harvested and ground, that whole process, that it never came in contact with water until it was baked into matzahs. That has to be used for the Seder, for the mitzvah. After that, a person can eat any kosher LePesach matzah, 18-minute matzah. And in fact, of course, a person doesn't have to eat matzah. Right? For the rest of the Yantiv, usually people make Chol Hamoed meals and you might want to eat, wash and bench. But if you don't want to eat matzah, you don't have to eat matzah after that. But the night of the Seder, it has to be shmur matzah. The afikomen really, preferably, should be eaten before midnight. It's a minhag to eat before midnight. And that has to do with the Korban Pesach. The afikomen represents the Korban Pesach. There's a discussion as to whether the Korban Pesach had to be eaten by midnight d'oraisa or d'rabbanan.
That was always d'rabbanan.
No, there's opinions that say that the Korban Pesach
That's all specifically.
Yeah, it's not just a offense because you might leave it over, that it actually has to be eaten.
Oh.
There's discussion there, and so there's a minhag to at least try your best to eat the afikomen by midnight. What?
Seems like it takes a little later.
Yeah, I've never been able to do it.
You pick it out, daylight savings time's up.
Well, midnight now is actually like after 1 o'clock because of
Right.
daylight savings time.
Right.
So you have some extra time.
Midnight,
Yeah.
it means midnight, not...
Right. Not by
Yeah, halachos standard.
right. But the thing is that the same thing also makes you start later. By now, it doesn't change how long you have. It's
Yeah.
Well, are you gonna...
What?
Are you gonna say that...
What?
You're gonna say that tonight?
So what?
You're gonna... Isn't there tonight you can make? That you don't...
Oh yeah. So I have to, because I never get there personally, but I try as hard as I can. So let's talk about arba kosos. So there's a mitzvah d'rabbanan to drink 4 kosos of yayin. They're all d'rabbanan except the kos shel kiddush. And I think the kos size of, I think Rav Moshe was 4.2 ounces. You can, you really should, first of all, it's preferable to use red wine. I just heard something interesting I didn't know before. This is what I heard, is that the grape juice that we have today is not, it's not just regular grape juice. And that's why it's a little worse to use our grape juice. If you leave our grape juice, it will not become wine. Now, grape juice used to be not very fermented wine, right? But the grape juice that we have has been treated or, you know,
Probably
Pasteurized.
pasteurized, and it's not going to become wine, even no matter how long you leave it. Right?
I think in Israel, maybe.
What's that?
Israel.
It could be that the wine Eretz Israel is not pasteurized, and maybe that's,
Grape juice,
that's
yeah.
different. The grape, I said the wine, I meant the grape juice.
Yeah.
That's another issue, is that we rely on the fact that yain mevushal is okay for the Seder. The Sephardim hold that it's not. But we use yain that is mevushal for the Seder, and people do rely on grape juice. What you can do is to take wine and mix it until it's a very, like, let's say 2 to 3, like 3% alcohol.
But-
What?
You should, for people that can't have alcohol.
If people can't, that's a separate thing. But I'm saying if a
You
person,
should always add that in there.
okay, if a person, if a person can't, they can, you know, speak to, either not drink and speak to the rabbi, but you can make it very small, you can make like 3%. Like if you mix grape juice with the already, let's say you take like that Joyvan wine or that has, it's like 5%, and you mix, you know, you just mix a little grape juice into it so you can make it to where it's about 3%. So if you can deal with that. Now the other thing you can do is, if you can't deal with wine so much, is to make it, like I said, into 3% and then drink just the majority of the cup. It's better to drink the whole cup. Right? The best thing to do is to take red wine, drink the whole cup. So you're drinking
How much is the cup? The cup would be a cup of
a little over 4 ounces. Right? So if you take 4 ounces and you have 4 cups, that's 16 ounces. You know, 5%, it's like a beer.
But didn't the
Yeah.
rabbi say at the lecture in shul, 1.9 ounces?
So that's, he's saying, I think, because, I don't know, I think he said that's because, first of all, it's half a cup. You're drinking, if you need to, that's what it's saying, you can drink half the cup. From what I understand, Ramosha's 4.2, so that'd be about 2 point.
He was saying
Somebody else was
because-
3.
Three.
No,
Behind him, right?
He was saying
No, I mean, Rav Henkin.
It wasn't really 4.2, it was actually less because the closest are really the Rabbanon, so the Ramosha shared the Rabbanon is half that.
Okay, so he was saying that what, it's how much?
Much like 3 something. But because the closest is the Rabbanon, Ramosha share of 4.4 is really, or 4.2
Okay,
is.
so you'd have to get, besides the kosher Kiddush,
Right.
right, you'd have to get
Especially
a,
this-
I think he
especially
brought
this
down
year.
though from Rabbi Shmuel that you can use grape juice or white wine.
You
That's
can.
the difference.
you can, I mean,
And he
it's,
said that red wine is not even.
I think, well, I don't know,
He
that's,
brought down from Rabbi Shmuel.
it's, okay, I can only say this, it says, maybe nowadays, there are those that hold that it's just as chashiv as red wine. I mean, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, it's red wine. It says clearly red wine. Maybe, you know, Rav Moshe held that you can use, I think, our grape juice.
How could it be that he said that you could have it split 50-50 the grape juice? I wasn't sure how that could be.
Why is that?
Because the grape juice itself, like you said, is diluted, it can't be made.
No,
No,
the grape
it's
juice is
not
not diluted.
What?
It's not
It's
diluted.
not diluted.
Oh, so you could dilute that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can rely on grape juice. I'm not saying you can't rely on grape juice. You can rely on grape juice. I'm just saying it's preferable to use wine to at least have a taste of wine. So if you dilute it down, it's at least like maybe there's 3%, so it's still like it still has a taste of wine to it. If a person can't drink wine, so they could drink grape juice. I'm not saying that you can't. It's just it's preferable
Right.
to use wine. I'm unfamiliar with this. I know that it says clearly, the Shulchan Aruch says that red wine is chashiv. Maybe our white wines today, maybe the white wines then weren't as, yeah.
If you're gonna mix like red and white wine, you should start with the red wine first and then add the white to the red versus the other way
You're
around.
saying because of Halachos.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
some people are allergic to the red wine, the stuff, like my wife. So she'd prefer the white, so I told her, I think you gotta start with a little bit of red wine so that it's already red color before you add the white to it.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point.
Okay, so now let's just talk. So the best thing is the whole cup. Best thing is to drink it all in one shot. If a person can't do that, so you can drink half Rove Kos, a little over half, and you can drink grape juice. Okay, you know, what happens with children? Best thing is to give them a regular kos, and they only need to drink a cheekful of their own cheek. Right? A male lugmav of their own cheek. And so they don't have to drink, even if you're making a little bit of wine in it or whatever. So so they don't have to drink very much. And again, they can drink grape juice. Karpas. So it's an interesting thing that the Mishnah Berurah Paskins, this is to the side, the Mishnah Berurah, when he Paskins on washing before eating a yerek, a vegetable, so the Mishnah Berurah Paskins, if it's less than a kazayas, you don't need to wash. Right? And so in later editions of the Mishnah Berurah, he put a note at the bottom that that's not how the Torah holds. And then but he says over now by Halachos Pesach that in the Bir Halacha that he found in the Rambam says that karpas has to be over a kazayas. And so he comes out in the end, it's sarech iyun. He says in the end it's not clear to him what the halacha is on karpas, on a vegetable, washing on a vegetable that's less than a kazayas.
Well, you can have the, do we have to actually eat the full kazayas?
No, you shouldn't actually.
Right, so...
I know. That's the thing is, I don't understand exactly.
Maybe the piece has to be more than the kazayas, but you don't eat the whole kazayas.
Maybe that's a good point. Maybe that's what it is. Because if you, so maybe in other words, for the washing issue has to be a kazayas, but because actually you don't want to eat a kazayas. That's actually an interesting point. I was wondering how that worked out. What?
Why would that matter how many pieces that you're going to eat?
Because if you're touching it, if you're touching a wet piece that's over kazayas, so from the halachas of tuma, that will be matzrich you to wash. But you don't want to eat a kazayas. Actually, I was wondering how the Rambam, because if you eat a kazayas
The Rambam
worth,
says you eat the full kazayas.
does he say that?
Yeah.
If you eat a kazayas worth of the karpas, so then you'd have to make a bracha achrona. You'd have to make, right? And so we don't want to do that. And the reason in general I think we don't want to do that is we want the bracha on the karpas to cover the maror. Apparently the Rambam holds that you would eat the entire and make a bracha achrona. But so that's not our minig. The minig is you take a vegetable, you dip it in the salt water, where you wash your hands first without a bracha. Right? Remember, don't make the bracha. Right? And then dip it in the karpas, dip the karpas in the salt water, and you make a brei pri adama. When you make that brei pri adama, have in mind that it's going to cover the maror that you're going to eat later. At the end, I was going to say a few halachas that are particular to when Pesach falls out on Shabbos. So one of them is that because of the malacha of ma'abed, one of the malachas of Shabbos is you're not allowed to make a mixture that's for tanning purposes. They used to tan hides, and that's one of the malachas of Shabbos. A high concentrate salt mixture will chemically change. If you put, let's say, lettuce into that, it will chemically change and cook it. It'll become very soft and the equivalent of cooking it. So you're not allowed to make such a mixture on Shabbos. Even though you use it, you're not allowed to make, the Chachamim forbid making such a mixture. And so you need to make your salt water before Shabbos. If that you forget and you don't make the salt water before Shabbos, so then you're allowed to make a small amount, a very small amount for Shabbos. For Shabbos, yeah.
It's really not, you can't make salt water on Shabbos? What happens if it's less, how salty does it have to be?
I don't know the percentages, but if it's a mixture that would alter, like let's say lettuce would cook it. If you make salt water and you put like lettuce or thing, it'll make it like it was cooked. What?
How quickly?
Yeah, it's like pickling.
I mean, because suddenly you're dipping it in.
It doesn't. It's not because that you're not pickling it. That's my point. Is you're not allowed to make such a mixture that would do that. So even if that you just dip it in, but you're not allowed to make that mixture. You know what I'm saying? They forbid making such a mixture on Shabbos because it's used for right. So I don't know exactly like the percentages.
But are you supposed to, if it's before Shabbos, when you make it before Shabbos, you're supposed to make it.
Oh, you can make it however you want.
So
The prohibition is to make that on Shabbos and not Shabbos.
Right.
It's like, you leave a light on before Shabbos. It's before Shabbos. So, so the karpas, there's a lot of reasons given for it. One of the reasons for it, though, is just a shinui. Right? We do a lot of odd things during the Seder just to get questions, just to make people inquisitive, to make particularly the children inquisitive. So, for example, we move the Seder plate to the back of the table, right before the 4 questions. We take the Seder plate and either take it off the table or move to the back of the table. Wait, we didn't eat yet, right? It's put there so that you can eat. Why are you taking this away before we even we've eaten? So the idea of it is that it gets children to ask. And so one of the reasons behind karpas is to get the children to ask questions. So like I said, just remember, have in mind that when you make the bracha on it, it's to cover the mortar as well. Eat less than a kazayas of it. It's generally kind of good when they bring it out. Like you haven't eaten really yet, and dip it in the salt water. It's kind of good. You can have a time of it, eat a bunch of it, but hold back. Now, I wanted to discuss for a little bit Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. What's the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim? And this has always been kind of confusing to me, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, because we have Higata to Levincha b'Yom Lemor. You should tell your child on that day, and then it tells us specifically in the Torah what you should say. Right? But then the Haggadah tells us that you should, speak about it all night. Right? Where does that come from? And then Rabbi Gamliel, at the end of the Seder, it says, Rabbi Gamliel, if anyone who has not mentioned these 3 things has not fulfilled the mitzvah. So where does that come from? What's the makor for that? What are we trying to do when we do this mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim? So there's a pasuk in Shmos, and it's right after when you have to bring the bechor, right, the firstborn of the animals. And so it says, V'yomer Moshe el ha'am, Zachar es hayom hazeh asher yitzasa mitzrayim. Remember this day that Hashem brought you out of Mitzrayim. And so this pasuk is brought as the makor for even if there's not children around, right, where you're doing Higat Levincha, that there's a mitzvah to speak about this. Now this pasuk is also brought for the mitzvah that we have daily. There's a mitzvah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim daily. Right? We fulfill that. Where do we fulfill that? The end of Kriya Shema. If you look in one of the Sidurim, it will say in the last pasuk of Kriya Shema, concentrate on fulfilling the mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So what's the difference between Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim and Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim? Anyone want to offer a thought?
Let's talk about it, let's remember it.
Good. That's one of the answers that's given. Right, as Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, you read and you think about it. It's to think about it. The Sipur is to go through the whole story. The word Sipur is related to the same root as to count. Right, to recount the story. By the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's meant to recount the story, to tell the entire story. And so, so we have this this mitzvah. The Rambam, if you look in the seventh parak, first halacha. So he says, "Mitzvahs aseh shal Torah l'saper v'nisim v'niflo shenasu lavoseinu b'Mitzrayim b'leil ha'chamisha asar v'nisan shenemar zachar es hayom azeh asher yitzasa miMitzrayim." Right? He quotes this pasuk that you should speak about the miracles and everything that Hashem did in Mitzrayim on the 15th of Nisan. Shenemar, and then he says Shenemar zachar es yom haShabbos. He compares it to Kiddush, for remembering Shabbos. And so it seems that according to the Rambam, that to merely speak a little bit about Yetzias Mitzrayim would fulfill the mitzvah at its smallest level, right? He compares it Zachar Yom Shabbos. And he says, how do we know it's the 15th? V'yigadet levincha v'yom lemor. So that seems to be the minimal level of it. But the mitzvah nowadays seems to be to go through the Haggadah. If you look at the psukim by the Arba Banim, by the 4 children, the Torah actually gives different answers than the Bala Haggadah does. If you look up the psukim there, it tells you what to tell each child. It's clear that there's a concept of chinuch here, that a person should speak to everybody when you teach about Yetzias Mitzrayim at the Seder. You should speak to every individual. You have to look at the people, know the people that are in the room, and you have to try to communicate to all of them differently. The Mishnah Berurah says, it's interesting, he says that when people would have the children say the Arba Shilas and then dismiss them, and so they never got the answer. Right? They'd ask the questions, the parents would say, okay, go play now, and they would never get the answers. So he says, you shouldn't do that, give them the answer, but he says that fulfills the mitzvah of Higat Levincha. If you if you have little kids and they don't really have the ability to do more than that, so have them ask the 4 questions, read them the answer that's in the Haggadah, that we were Avadim to Paro and Mitzrayim, and then you can dismiss them and let them go. At the end of the Seder, it says that Rabban Gamliel, if you don't speak about these 3 things, there's a discussion among the Rishonim what mitzvah that is. According to some of the Rishonim, those 3 things apply to the Korban Pesach, and they're not part of the chiyuv, the obligation of speaking about leaving Egypt. According to others, it is. So the best thing to do is to make sure everybody hears that part. If you're having a Seder, make sure everyone who's wandered away or fallen asleep or whatever it might be comes back or wakes up to hear Rabban Gamliel. And as it says, the best thing is to speak about it as much as possible. It says in the Halachos it's best to fall asleep going over the Yetzias Mitzrayim after the 4th coast. That's not such a tall order. I think if you just start to speak for even a few minutes, most likely you will fall asleep speaking about Yetzias Mitzrayim. So I think it's fairly easily fulfilled. It sounds like a tough thing, but I don't think it is. It says in the Halachos that you have to make sure that the people around you understand the language what you're saying. So you either have to read it, the Haggadah, in a language which everyone understands, or else if you're going to read it in Hebrew and they don't understand Hebrew, you have to explain it. But the point of the Sipur is that the people there should understand what the story's about. So like I said, either say it in English, or else, if you're in America here, or else say it in Ivrit, and then be masbir so people understand what you're talking about. Mor, it's a mitzvah to eat a kazayas of mor. People use either lettuce, romaine lettuce, which needs to be checked carefully for bugs, and you can find out how to do that from the Vada ear. I think Reps Raven can tell you how to do that.
They're giving a class on Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. So that's a serious thing. Eating bugs is a serious prohibition from the Torah. And I guarantee you that if you just buy romaine lettuce, you will be eating bugs if you don't check it. It's guaranteed. It's invested. If you buy organic romaine lettuce, you'll be eating a whole lot of bugs. A whole lot.
Extra protein.
Oh, a lot. And so my wife and I one time got organic lettuce. One time we had to throw it out because it was unusable. It was so filled with bugs. And so it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to try to fill the mitzvah more and then be eating bugs, which the Torah clearly forbids. And so every time that we check, you do find. I have to tell you, if you buy the romaine parts and take off a couple of the outer leaves, it's considerably cleaner. There's not a whole lot, but it still should be checked, and so it's probably a good idea to go to that shiur. What are the differences by when it falls out on Shabbos, when the first night of Pesach falls out on Shabbos? So in the Kiddush, you have to mention Shabbos. You have to say Vayichu in the Kiddush of, on Friday night when we make Kiddush. Like I said, the salt water, you have to make the salt water before, or else just a very small amount. You have to make Havdalah, being Kodesh LaKodesh, on Motzei Shabbos, right during the Kiddush of the second Seder. And then also, I believe if you want to grate the mortar, if you want to grate the horseradish, which is the other mortar that people use, so you need to do that before Shabbos. I don't think you can grate that on Shabbos. And so those I think are the only four things that I can think of. Anybody think of anything else? Those are the only four things that I can think of that that are different. So just a thought in closing. We had Charlie Harari come in this last week, and he spoke, and he was asking the following question. He was asking, the first Seder that was ever done was done before they left Mitzrayim. Right? The night before they left Mitzrayim was the first Seder. So what were they doing there? Because they weren't talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim. So what he gave the answer is like this. He said that Hashem was changing their mindset. They looked at themselves, I don't know what his makor for this was, but their mindset was that they're avadim. And avadim look at themselves as nothing. And so during this Seder, Hashem was changing what he called the schema, their mindset, that they're really important. They're not avadim, they're avdei Hashem, and that's a very important position in life to be part of Klal Yisrael. And so I was thinking before that he came, it just struck me that by Purim, the Megillah doesn't even mention Hashem's name at all. It's all Mordechai and Esther. Maybe it's alluded to, but it doesn't mention Hashem's name at all. And I was thinking by the Pesach Seder, it doesn't mention Moshe Rabbeinu. It only mentions Hashem. And not only does it only mention Hashem, but it goes out of its way to say that the Haggadah says that it was Lo al Yadei Saraf, Lo al Yadei Shliach, right? It wasn't through a messenger. It was Hashem ba'atzmo ukvodo. It was Hashem himself in his honor. And why did the Haggadah have to be magdish that? Why did it have to make that point that it was mamish Hashem that did it? And so I was thinking how that kind of dovetailed with what he was saying. That the point of it was, if you ask a Rav a Shaila, and it's Erev Shabbos and he doesn't have time to get to you, so he sends a shliach to your door to give you the answer. That's very nice. The shliach of the Rav came to the door, he thought of you. But if the Rav comes himself, knocking on your door to give you the answer, it's a very chashuv, you feel, wow, came to my door to give me the answer. And so that's the point there maybe, is that Hashem was taking us and saying, you're not avadim. Hashem himself came to say, you are important, you're chashuv. And so, as we go through this Seder and we're brought out of Mitzrayim again, part of the idea perhaps that we have to take with us is that Hashem is giving us a very important role in the world, a very chashuv role, and that we should feel that, and that we should look at our avodas Hashem that way. That it's very, very important. All the mitzvahs that we do, sometimes we lose sight. All the little acts, all the little mitzvahs, right? But they're actually that's part of our being avadim to Hashem, badim l'makom. And so everybody should have a wonderful Yetzias Mitzrayim, a Chag Kasher V'Sameach, and we should come out different people at the end and feel the real chashivas of our avoda.
Rabbi, you